Get ready for another episode of Bite-Sized World Building. This is the brand new series where we use time-bound, goal-oriented brainstorming sessions in order to build our world one bite at a time without overbuilding, overcomplicating, or overprocrastinating the process. I am your host, CF Claire. I am an aspiring romance author, a mom of 2 young kids, and I'm on a journey to become self-published. I have a lot of books to write. I have a lot of world to build. So let's get into it. At the moment, we've been working on Project Demon, which is a rom-com, romantasy, myth adventure sort of story. And we're at the stage now where the outline needs to be fleshed out, and there are some specific inspirational world building things that need to be addressed. And so far, we've worked on a couple of those things in other episodes of Bite Size World Building, which you can check out if you are interested. We want to come up with our climate, weather, terrain, 15 geographical landmarks, as well as 15 cultural landmarks in the next 30 minutes before I need to make lunch for the kids. So, how are we going to do this? I don't like coming up with whole entire new worlds based on just like things in my head. I actually really like finding a primary source of inspiration and then seeing what do I like from that, what do I not like, how can I twist that? If I add in the elements that are particular to my story, how does that make it my own? That's the fun of it for me. So, the main inspiration for this project is Greek mythology. Now, before we actually get into what's essentially, I guess, just like researching ancient Greece, let's tie it back into why this is actually world building. So let's look at John Truby, Anatomy of Genres. Now, when I say that this is a rom-com, romantasy, adventure, myth sort of story, I'm not talking just the vibes. I am also talking story structure, specifically the myth story structure as John Truby talks about it. If you are not familiar with Anatomy of Genre, I really recommend it. I think it's very interesting, even if not every genre feels necessarily the same in books as they may be in film, because he comes from a film background. It's still very interesting, and I'm thinking specifically of his take on the fantasy genre. I think it's quite different from books to films. But anyway, so we're looking at myth right now. So on page 136, the myth story beat of the story world. It's a natural world and two cultures. In all world building stories, especially myth, the story world is strongly connected to the natural world, such as forests, island, oceans, jungles, ice, deserts, and rivers. This connection comes out of the deeper themes of myth that express an ecological view of the world. The forces of connection in the natural world are palpable, and humans are part of that natural web. Myth stories also connect the hero with the kingdom. They start in one kingdom and journey through another kingdom before returning home, and this creates a contrast between the two cultures that the story explores. At the beginning of the myth story, the hero typically lives in an oppressive or conformist society culture. Often the current king is a tyrant. Now, in this particular book, the tyrant is the male main character. We're working on a sort of response to the morally gray, morally black hero that's so popular in romantasy at the moment. And so my take on that is in this book, Project Demon, where he is a sort of demon king figure. He has this wild, very satisfying emotional arc, and it's really fun. Right now, we're working on world building for in this world, there's no humans. It's a demon angel homeworld. So the angel side of things is largely inspired by ancient Greece. That's what we're looking at right now today. So a lot of the travel and things that happen in the book take place in this angel side. And so we have this demon king from the demon side going through and having these sort of trials and journeys within the angel side. And so that's a really fun way for him to confront a lot of stuff that he needs to confront in order to grow. Step number 1 for creating the story world, this is page 137, is to define the overall story arena. The arena is a unified place surrounded by some kind of wall. Now, we are using that, and in a different video, we talked about how one of the things that I want to be going on in this world is that there are these sorts of magical terrain markers where it makes travel very difficult to cross because of these sort of magical walls standing in the way. So, part of what we're doing today is defining that secondary story arena that's going to be surrounded by this magical wall of this angel location. So, that's enough for my little introduction to how this is all related to actual world building, even though what we're literally doing right now is we're going to research ancient Greece. So let's jump into that. I'm going to pull up my computer. And just as a heads up, we don't use AI. That's not our thing. We discourage that hugely for a lot of reasons. And we don't need to get too deep into it right now. To the best of our ability, we will be using the most trustworthy looking websites that we can. And my car is actually in the shop right now where I would have loved to go to the library and pick out some books on ancient Greece. Uh, Unfortunately, we can't do that yet, but that will be in the future. So, historylink101.com, Greek climate and physical geography. So, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to just read out some of the things that seem most applicable to what we're looking up. So, I guess we'll just learn about ancient Greece a little bit together. The peninsula of ancient Greece had a Mediterranean climate. Its summers were hot and dry. Temperatures averaged about 75 degrees in summer. Mediterranean waters and a northwesterly breeze known as the Etesian kept temperatures at a comfortable level. In the winter, temperatures again were influenced by the surrounding water. Typically, temperatures did not go below 40 degrees, except in high mountains. The average yearly rainfall ranged from 20 to 50 inches, with the majority coming down in the winter months. Greece typically experienced a large amount of sunny days during the year. This is great. This is what we need. So let's just write some of this down. Okay. The geography of ancient Greece was divided into three regions: the coast, the lowlands, and the mountains. The rocky and uneven soil on the peninsula of Greece allowed for less than 20% of the land to be farmed, so the Greeks relied heavily on imports of grains and other foods from other regions around the Mediterranean. There's no rivers that could be used for boats because rivers would dry up in the hot summer and be overflowing during the winter. Transportation on the sea was very important to the Greeks. The mountainous terrain made land travel difficult and contributed to the formation of independent city-states throughout the region. And that's actually super fun, I think, because all of this sea travel in this world that is the angel homeworld side of things. It's just like angels on boats. It's really funny. I think it's cute. But this is the thing, is that even though angels could fly, how are they transporting these goods, right? Like, they do actually just still need the sea. I think that's really fun. Now we're looking at greece.mrdonn.org. The geography of ancient Greece. Okay, so they're affirming that there were three regions: coastline, lowlands, and mountains. So, for the coastline, saltwater and harbors. Ancient Greece was made up of hundreds of city states grouped together at the southern end of a very large peninsula that jutted out into the Mediterranean Sea. Smaller peninsulas stuck out from the main Greek peninsula, forming a great deal of natural coastline and many natural harbors. There were hundreds of small islands nearby in the Ionian and Aegean seas. The people of ancient Greece took advantage of all this saltwater and coastline and became outstanding fishermen and sailors. There was some farmland for crops, but the Greeks could always count on seafood and waterfowl to eat. Rivers could not be counted on for transportation because rivers dried up in the summer and overflowed in the winter. Lowlands, rocky and uneven soil, climate, and farming. Summers were hot and dry, and winters were mild and windy. Only about 20% of the land of the Greek peninsula could be farmed. The ancient Greek farmers grew crops that would survive in this environment: wheat, barley, olives, and grapes. The many hills and mountains provided shrubs to feed herds of cattle and sheep. The early Greeks also depended heavily upon trade and import. One reason early Greeks tried to set up colonies in North Africa and Asia: they wanted to control the import of grains and other foods. Okay, so what I'm seeing is, this is perhaps a good reason for there to be tension between, in my world, angels and demons. Like, what if the demon home world is much more farmable? Suddenly, this is a great reason for power struggles and territory concerns, right? And the other thing is that in a different brainstorming session, we came up with some of the monsters from Greek mythology that I know that I want to have. And there was one in particular, the Stymphalian birds, that had a very interesting side effect that could play into this whole problem of unfarmable land, is that their dung was like poisonous or something, and it like destroyed arability of land, something like that. So it could be like, what if there's like a huge surplus population of Stymphalian birds or something, even contributing to this and adding another pressure point on. Like, we have some possibilities to work with here. This is good. The mountains. Lots of mountains and fresh water. The ancient Greeks needed a source of fresh water to settle down. Greece has lots of mountains. They're not huge mountains like the Alps, but they're big enough to provide two important things: a source of fresh water running down the mountains in creeks and streams, and a system of natural defense barriers. The mountains made land travel very difficult and contributed to the formation of independent city-states. Not many roads were built because they would have to avoid the mountains and follow the long, meandering coastline. Besides, connect to what? Each city-state in ancient Greece was its own unit with its own government and its own way of doing things. Europe.factsanddetails.com. And it's not letting me scroll up. What are we doing here? All right, geography of Greece. About 80% of Greece is covered with mountains, with the result that most settlements were less than 10 miles from a mountain. This is good to know. These mountain ranges isolated regions from each other more effectively than fences because what they lack in height they made up with steepness and ruggedness, preventing or discouraging overland travel and communication. Greece is broken up into 6 major regions. Okay, that's funny. So in one of the other world building videos that I did on Project Human, I was like, let's figure out 10 major kingdoms, which I meant regions. And apparently there's 6. Anyways, we came up with some stuff, but this is funny. Few classical Greek cities were located right on the water because of worries about piracy and hostile raids. Even a city that traded extensively still had to transport cargo to and from its port. The road between Athens and Corinth, 2 of the main city-states in ancient Greece, was a narrow and treacherous path along sheer seaside cliffs, probably suitable only for pedestrians and pack animals, and any wheeled traffic had to take a more circuitous, a more circus inland route. Okay, so that's very interesting too, because this is fun because they're angels. So like, yes, treacherous path, lots of goods. They do have wings, but yeah, that transportation of goods that would put them in such an exposed spot. And in this world, there just like are a ton of monsters, just like a lot. And a lot of them can fly. So that's actually really fun. And then it just gives a little bit about Delphi, which we know that's a major location that my characters are headed to. So Delphi is in a particularly mountainous area, and the roads, as described by Pausanias, were generally difficult. Okay. Okay, Pausanias. Sounds like everything was difficult. All right. I do think that this section's fine. So let's move on to our 15 geographical landmarks. So we're looking for things that are like major rivers. Sounds like there weren't any. Sounds like they dried up in the summer. Major mountains, mountain ranges, major volcanoes, major caves, like I don't know, things like that. We know our first, and that's Mount Olympus. We're almost running out of time if we're trying to keep it within 30 minutes because these websites are just taking a real long time to load. Okay, volcano.si.edu. This is Smithsonian Institution. Greece volcanoes. Greece has 5 Holocene volcanoes. So I don't know what a Holocene volcano is. We'll have to look that up in a second. But they have a section for eruptions recorded. And whatever Pleistocene volcanoes are, there's no recorded eruptions. So I don't know. But if we go to Holocene eruptions, Santorini is coming up a lot. Okay. And then we'll look up famous mountains. When I tried to look up geographical landmarks, they were just like giving me cultural landmarks. So kind of annoying, but what are you gonna do? All right, at this point, it has been 30 minutes, so I need to wrap this up. I would really like to get my last 5 geographical landmarks, and then we'll just take a little bit of a break while I do lunch with the kids and come back. Wikipedia, list of rivers in ancient Greece. Well, in Greece. I wish it would talk about the major rivers because I guess there are a number of, I believe, small rivers. I mean, when I look at the map, it does not look like there's a lot of rivers going on, so they can't be like incredibly huge. So I would really just like two or three of the main rivers is kind of what I'm looking for. Okay, so Wikipedia on the geography of Greece. The Pindus mountain range. It is a mountain range. Okay, let's put that. Lies across the center of the country. Blah, 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 blah. Extensions of the same mountain range stretch across the Peloponnese and underwater across the Aegean, forming many of the Aegean islands, including Crete, and joining with the Taurus Mountains of southern Turkey. That's interesting. Central and western Greece contain high and steep peaks intersected by many canyons and other karstic landscapes, including the Meteora and the Vikos gorges. Karst is a topography formed from the dissolution of soluble. Ooh, it's characterized by features like polges above, Poljes, and drainage systems with sinkholes and caves underground. That's extremely cool. The Meteora is a rock formation in the regional unit of Trikala in Thessaly. The Vikos Gorges, or Vikos Canyon, is a gorge in the Pindus Mountains. It lies on the southern slopes of Mount Timph. This is the page I needed about 20 minutes ago. Okay, so according to this map, it looks like central Greece would be where Delphi is, and possibly also Mount Olympus, or Mount Olympus is near Thessaly, unclear. But that's sort of the area that I'm looking to have my characters traveling. Okay, Greece's natural hazards include severe earthquakes, floods, droughts, and wildfires. Harder to find than I thought it would be. Again, I think if I had a book from the library, this all would have been a lot easier. Oh well. But 15 geographical landmarks, we are going to use Mount Olympus, Santorini volcano, Methana volcano, Nisseros volcano, Colombo volcano, Milos volcano, Pindus mountain range, Koroks mountain, Parnassus mountain, Thessalian plain, Heliakamon river, Peneus river, Meteora rock formation, Vikos gorges, and Kremasta lake. We'll come back after lunch. I'm back. And we couldn't find what we were looking for. I tried really hard. I spent like 30 minutes looking for what I thought would be very simple, just cultural landmarks that were important to ancient Greeks when they were alive. And all I could find was a list of here are some things that are cultural landmarks that you shouldn't miss if you're a tourist. And there's some crossover, but it didn't feel like what I was actually trying to find. So I switched it instead, and I decided I would just say 15 cultural story frames. Totally different thing. I think I need to just like get some books from the library to find what I'm actually looking for. But instead, at least these story frames are helping me think of like, okay, the culture, the history decisions that I think I want to make in this world can be influenced by the terrain we just learned about, as well as some Greek myth stories in particular that I want to keep in mind. So those cultural story frames are Sisyphus, Andromeda and Perseus, Bellerophon and Pegasus, the 12 labors of Hercules, Andromeda's rock, Orpheus and Eurydice, Perseus and Medusa, the Eleusinian mysteries, Caledonian boar hunt, Trojan War, Argonaut expedition, Prometheus and the theft of fire, Pandora's box, the abduction of Persephone, and Theseus and the Minotaur. So I'm just going to kind of let that cook in the back of my head as I go back tomorrow to working on fleshing out that outline for Project Demon. We're reaching the end of the part of the outline where they're journeying through this angel territory. They're about to go back to the demon territory pretty soon. But I do think that this really did help with some of the like things they would encounter along the way, which is part of what I'm looking for as I'm fleshing this stuff out. How would they interact with the people? What do the cities look like? What's the climate? Like, is it supposed to rain? No, it's not. What kind of terrain are they going through on this journey? What does that look like? Turns out, very mountainous, sometimes sheer cliffs. That's kind of an important factor. It makes it a little risky to travel on, as well as pretty exposed to any we know there's tons and tons of monsters in this world. So, and then, yeah, I'm excited to use those cultural story frames to just like pick one and be like, what if I used the seed of this idea, like the Caledonian boar hunt? And I just decided, okay, the city they're passing through, Caledonian boar hunt happened at some point in that city's past. And so then what would be an interesting way for that city to be now? Who knows? So yeah, thanks for coming along. I hope your world building's going great. I hope your writing's going great. I hope you're doing great. Definitely drop below your least favorite part of world building. I'd love to hear about it. Mine might be research, just because of the frustration of how do you, where's all this information hiding? Like, what's going on? Who has it? I'll put on the screen a more legible version of the things that we just came up with, and I will see you in the next video.